The Queen's Eyrie by Kimber York. Read aloud by Kimber York. Content tags. A lot of my writing contains mature themes. Content tags are located on my website, which list out the themes, tropes, and topics for this story. Please note that those warnings can be spoilery. If you have any concerns or feel the story has been under-tagged, please let me know. Authoria. A few things to know before listening to this book. Polyamory. This is a male-male-female story, which features a male-male-female threesome falling in love together. It is not a love triangle story, it is a love triad story. End game is male-male-female. If that is not your jam, no hard feelings, but this is not the book for you. Dragons in general are roughly the size of full-grown female African elephants, which don't exist in this story and so were hard to describe adequately. Be proud of me for taking out bigger than a bread box, smaller than a house from the first draft. I am a professional. Queen dragons are as large or slightly larger than bull African elephants. Their final true size depends a lot on the territory they claim, the number of dragons they rule, how old they are, etc. Insert hand-wavy magic here. This is a low magic story. There are no wizards or elves or eldritch horrors, just dragons being shapeshifters and their connections to the magic of the world they live in. Dragons are not humans. They are dragons who have two forms, flying and walking. Dragons and humans are both people, but humankind and dragonkind mean two very different things. Think of them as different but codependent species. This is also a low-heat story. Intimacy happens, but off-screen. If you are looking for male-male-female erotica, this is not the story for you. Thank you for picking up this book, and I hope you enjoy it. Prologue. Agadard Verkleelen was 16 years old when she realized that she did not actually want to get married and go to the capital to serve as a handmaiden to the dragon queen of Kaltent, Theedra. She thought that, given her family history, there were better things she could do with her life. She announced her new plans to her father, Lord Stigar Verkleelen, over their shared breakfast. "You're what now?" Her father put down the broadsheet he was reading. "Volunteering for the Dragon Maids Corps." He frowned a little, then returned to his reading. Agadard drank her tea and waited. "Any particular reason?" he asked a few minutes later, without looking up. "I thought maybe it was time I got out for a bit." Humph. She kept waiting. Eventually her father put the broadsheet aside and looked at her. "Does this have anything to do with your betrothal to Baron Peril Stewart of Trinx?" She nodded. "Oh, yes." He smiled because he had as much patience with the stuffy manners of Baron Peril Stewart as she did. In fact, she suspected there was no man who would ever gain her father's approval for her hand, which suited her just fine. She knew her father would never have allowed her to be married off to Baron Stewart in the first place if her mother had not been so keen on the alliance. Her father sighed. "Dangerous business working with dragons." "I don't expect I'll be working with them, would I? Helping the wounded and what not." "They're a tough lot." "The wounded?" "Dragons. Remember your uncle," her father admonished. Agadard sighed. The only living dragon in their family was her father's older brother, Herkt Verkleelen, who had disappeared into the far Westlands to go work as a hired mercenary for some exotic Westlands queen, last anyone heard. More sword gossip was that he was less a proper guardian than a favored courtesan, but either way, it had been quite a scandal. Agadard's father, who inherited his title and his lands in the aftermath of his brother's abdication, rarely talked about it. It had happened years before she was born, anyway. Her father knew a lot about dragons, growing up with one, but no one would guess it by his manners or comments. That the proper Verkleelen lineage had once again been besmirched with the birth of a dragon after several generations without a stain was not easily overcome. But Agadart's mother was doing her damnedest to try to erase it by way of betrothing her only child to the Baron. To Agadart, it felt like being sold off to the highest bidder. "You're always welcome to come home when it gets rough, sweetheart." Her father smiled at her. "I know, father, and I will come home again eventually." He nodded agreeably before picking up the broadsheet and paused as they both heard sharp heels clicking down the hallway to the breakfast room. Agadart's mother swept in triumphantly to tell them that the marriage contract had been signed by Queen Theodra and the date for the wedding set. Staring down at her plate, Agadart thought it had been nice to pretend otherwise for a moment. End prologue. Next up, Chapter 1. Thanks for reading along.